And we are live. Welcome to this live stream where I'm lucky and have Vasil, which is heading up the front-end development at Crystallize with me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vasil, as Bort said. I'm lead front-end developer, and I'm very happy to join Bort today for discussion on roles and permissions in Crystallize.
It's a good topic. I wouldn't say normally it's not the most fun topic, but I think we will have some fun things, or at least visually pleasing things to show. And the topic of today is exactly that: the roles and permissions in Crystallize, where we have quite recently released a big update to it, where we have really enhanced the capabilities of what you can do with user roles in Crystallize. And just before we dive into it, and this is representing a little bit also the design team, where there's so many enterprise softwares out there where it's an endless list of checkboxes or dependencies back and forth, and you, not to name any names of pieces of software, but sometimes you kind of have to have a PhD just to set up the permissions, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to take inspiration from which we usually try to do, the B2C, the consumer side of things, and what is more natural than the games, and see how we can look at gamification and the concept of talent trees. Couldn't that work for roles? That was kind of a little bit the design inspiration. But of course, if we jump to what we wanted to solve, it's of course to have enterprise grade access control, but we want to try to reimagine how this is done, as we say, as part of our journey to reimagine e-commerce in total. And we have introduced two types of permissions. First of all, we have the app permissions, which gives you the possibility to limit what I have access to do in the app, which is also reflected in the APIs. Correction, not all APIs. It's the PIM API where you're doing the management. Developer speak, you have mutations and queries. But we also introduced a little bit more of a personalization configuration topic that we will introduce, which we've called UI preferences. So there's a couple of different concepts here. And this, of course, is in addition to what we have for the public-facing APIs, like the catalog and search, where it's token-based access for all the features there. But okay, that's a lot of talk from my side. So just jump into it and let's see what it's all about and try to create a role from scratch. Vasil, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, thank you, Bort. I'll take it from here. Let's look at something more kind of visual and please that's gonna make us happy. Cool. So first thing I want to do here is to set the scene of actually what we'll do for in this demo. First, I will create a very simple role, and then I will invite a user with this role, right? So for this demo, I have two users. What you see here on my screen, this is the user that will manage the role. So I'll create the user with this role. And then I have this second user, which is on a different browser, as you can understand, that will consume the role. And then later we'll change permissions, do different things with the roles and permissions, right? And then we will see how that is reflected. Cool. So the first thing is really to create a simple role. To do that, we go to the settings rows, and then we just click on create role. So for this demo, I will create a role which is called content editor. Something very simple. We will look at the permissions and everything afterwards. For now, I will just create the role. As you can see, the role is created. And the next thing that we will do, we will invite the user. Just before jumping there, I will say that this role doesn't have any permissions. As you can see, everything is grayed out. So I'll go to the users, and then I will create invite link with the content editor role that I just set, right? So over here, I will generate the link, and this is the link that I get. So I copied the link, then I will go back, I'll go to the other user, the user which will consume the role. So over here, I'll paste the invite link. And as you can see, this is the user that just joined my tenant that I invited as a content editor. Since the content editor role that I set is like didn't have any permissions, you can see that the user pretty much has access to the dashboard and then some simple settings here, which are available for everybody. Cool. So now what we can do, we can go back to the content editor row, and then we can start adding permissions and kind of see how that works. Cool. So I'll go back to the rows and the content editor.
And just on this screen here, because here now you have a role, you say everything is grayed out, but maybe we could explain the main screen, what we're seeing here, because as you scroll, I see more and more diamonds and some other things. Maybe we could take a look at what we have here.
Sure thing. Okay, so this is what actually Bort mentioned earlier, that our design team took this inspiration for the games, and like having this talent tree that allows you to set different skills, right, which are followed by each other. So this is our setup for the role. So what we see here on the screen are different areas of the Crystallize product. So we have here the catalog on the top, the commerce, the build tools, and then at the bottom we have the manage. And then in each of this area we have resources, right? For example, for the catalog we have the tree resource, topics, grids, assets. In the commerce, these are the resource. So each of these things that you see here are resources to which we can give permissions. And so instead of seeing this long list that's at the board with check boxes that you need to click and unclick different things, what you actually get to see here is that, for example, if I want to give create permission for the tree, I will need also the read permission, right? Because you can, if you create something, then you need to read it back, so you know what we did. And this is how it works for all of this. Also, what you can see here is that some of the resources, they have different permissions. For example, the tree and the grids, they have additionally publish and unpublish on top of the standard permissions which are created, they delete. And this goes for all the different resources, as you can see here. For example, some resources like the reports, they are just complete only for reading, right? So then they don't have any additional permissions. And these are all the different parts in Crystallize. Cool. So for our content editor role, I think what is important is actually to give access to the tree, right? So because we should allow this user who is consuming the role to access the tree. And the first thing that we can do here is just give read permission to the tree. So when I click on it, and then I'm presented with this dialog. And since the tree itself is like very complex resource, which is built on top of a smaller resources. For example, every time when we want to create an item in the tree, like a product or a document folder, it doesn't matter. It's built on top of a shape, right? First, we need to have a shape, and then we build the item. So then the tree actually item has dependency of the shape. And the same goes for languages, because we can have the item in multiple languages, assets, and so on. So here we are just kind of asking the user if he agrees to give also read permissions to the following resources. So when we actually display an item in the tree, then we get kind of the full view of everything what it consists. Cool. And then I'll give this permission. As you can see, so the things that are now selected are in blue, they are highlighted. So these are the read permissions that I'm giving to the content editor. And here on the right-hand side, we have overview of the role. So in the quick look, we can snap like what are the resources, what are the permissions. For example, if I want to give orders updates, this also gives the read, right? You see here it appeared. Then I can say create, delete, all the permissions are here. And if I remove the read, then everything is just removed because we cannot read really the resource. Cool. And then one last thing maybe that I'll show here around it is that, as you can see, on each of these resources, I can click and then go kind of deeper into it. And this is overview of the resource. And here we have already this check boxes that if some people are used to it, they can come and click here as well. Or then you can use this button that just gives full access to all the permissions, as you can see here at the bottom, that everything now has access to, I have access to all this. Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's keep it like this. Then I will update this row. So this row is updated. So now let's switch to the other user actually and see how this will be reflected. Cool. So I switch to the other user, and then the first thing that you notice maybe is that I got these two new icons. One is the catwalk. They're not new, but the user didn't have them before, right? So this is the catwalk, and then this is the assets. So if I go to the catwalk, let's say I'll go here to the shop folder, kitchen, and this is the item, right? So what is interesting here, actually, if I scroll down, you see it is that all these input fields, they're disabled. And why is that? Because the user, the raw content editor can only read the catalog. So the row doesn't have access to kind of, cannot update. So we cannot really change anything, or we cannot even publish it, right? So everything is grayed out, kind of indicating that we're in a read mode where we can just look at it, but we cannot really change anything. And if we decide to give update permissions, then everything will be enabled, and then we can make changes and save. Cool. And this is how it looks here. Is everything also disabled the same way? Okay. So I think this kind of covers the base setup of like having a row with permissions, and then looking at how this is really reflecting it in the UI.
And to just quickly recap here, so you gave access to the tree, but the main diamond shape there is basically just read access, and that's why you have access to the full catalog, but you can't change anything, and that's the role we had. So what if you want to then take it to the next level and give access to something?
Yeah, so this was actually a thing that we realized when we were developing the roles and permissions is that quite often we'll have users which we would like to, we'll have a catalog which is a tree which is very complex. So for a lot of different folders like shop and stories and managing front ends or whatever. So sometimes we may want to actually limit that access to the tree, right? Because we don't want the content editor to go and change, for example, the stories, the storytelling part, because this is a different person who is managing that. So in Crystallize, we came up with the idea of conditional access. So how we can set this conditional access or limit the access for different permissions. For example, if we look at the tree resource of the overview, you see here at the top we have like all the current permissions that the user has. But then at the bottom here we have this conditional access section where we can set conditional access to the tree. So how does that how this works? So if I click on the button, you see here that since currently the user has only read permission, then I can set the conditional access to the read. But then we can also set it separately to update, delete, to all different permissions that can have conditional access, which makes it very powerful because if we want, we can set the user to be able to read in one language, but update only in a certain language and stuff like that. And then the conditional access that we have today is based on language and a catalog item. So for example, I can say that I want this user to be able to read the items in English language only. And then I want to say that the content editor will be responsible only for the shop. So I'll drag and drop the shop folder. So this tells kind of the role that the user will be able to read only the shop folder in English and all the items inside, right? Or if you want to be more specific here, we can even like go to the shop, let's say kitchen or plants, we can just grab the kitchen and put it here as well. So this can make it even like further be more specific on what the user can see. Cool. And then I'll create the condition. So as you can see here, this is the read permission. It has condition for English language, and the user, the row allows only reading the shop folder. We have this mushroom here indicating the conditions, and as well we have it here in the diamond that says when you look at it, actually you can easily see that this resource has conditional access. So it's kind of easy to grasp it. Cool, then I will update this. I'll update the row with the conditional access, and then we'll switch to the other user and see how that is reflected there. Cool. So I switched to the user, and what you see here, kind of two things changed. First is the icon for the catwalk over here. I don't know if you noticed, but now it's like half is yellowish, kind of blur, and the other one is kind of what used to be before. And this is mainly because this is permission restricted catwalk. So now we are no longer seeing the full tree from top to bottom. We are seeing just different parts to which we have access, because for the other items we don't have access. The API will not allow us to see it. We cannot see it in the UI, so they're removed. And then we're seeing just the things that we can actually touch. And then when we go to the shop, it's exactly as before. Nothing really changed there. The items and everything is looking as before. And that's the conditional access which we can set. And then for the language, I forgot to mention, this tenant actually has two languages set, Norwegian and English. When I look at here, the dropdown, I have only access to the English because I'm not allowed to read it in Norwegian language in this case.
And this is actually a neat also trick for usability, because now you just have the items in the tree that you care about. If you just manage products under a specific folder, or just publish news updates or update a blog or things like this, it makes it simpler to use. You don't have to navigate the tree, and I like that. That's a nice one.
Yeah, and then we can be even like further more specific to just particular folder deep down in the tree if it's needed, right? So we can just get the thing exactly we need, rather than like having a full overview of all the items in the tree, which, as you said, maybe never used by the person consuming the role.
Okay, so if you want, you can give me access to just like a plant folder and a kitchen folder, and that's what I see in the menu, or?
Yeah, exactly. Or even a specific item or specific document. It doesn't need to be a folder, right? It could be any item.
And you can do that on the same time, have multiples?
Yes, we can combine that easily, as I showed you when we are setting the row. We just need to add more items here, and they all will be displayed in the catwalk tree.
Nice.
And then we can work from there. Yep.
So, but I still can't do anything. I could just view, right? Just to read permissions for now.
Yeah. So what we can try here, we can also give the update permissions. The update permissions also have a similar set of requirements as the read. So now if I come over here, and then if I navigate to an item, you see that now everything is enabled for me because I have update permissions for this item. And the good part, as I said earlier with the conditional access, is that we can configure it so we can allow reading items in one language, but updating the item in different language. This could be useful, for example, if we have a case where we want to allow the content editor to see the item in English language, but then allow this content editor to update only the German language, because, for example, like doing translations or anything like that, right? This will be like very handy. So we can have this conditional access based on a permission, and it makes it very powerful, the setup.
Nice. One of the things that that we also touched upon in the beginning is more like what we introduced as UI preferences, right? That's a little bit different.
Yeah. So also when we were kind of designing the roles and permissions, we figured out that there is kind of a niche there that would improve the kind of the user experience even further, and that's the concept of UI preferences. So we figured that, for example, if we have a row that is responsible for managing price variants, the row could manage more things, but one part is the price variants. And if the tenant has a lot of different price variants set, then it doesn't really make sense for that row or that user which is consuming the row to see all the price variants and try to mingle between them and find the one that is needed. So we decided that it's going to be very handy actually if we can in the UI display just the price variants, for example, that the user can see and the user the row can work with and the row can update, right? And this is actually the concept of the UI preference. So the UI preference is something that strictly is UI related, which means it has effect only in the UI. Of course, on the API sides, it doesn't do anything. But that's, as I said, it is very handy when you're working with the UI, so you can have different setup for different roles.
And like a good example is if you're working on a specific market, you don't really care about content for the other market. If you're working in Norwegian prices or Swedish prices, I mean, that's what you will focus on.
Yeah, exactly. And so to start with the UI preferences, we decided that the first thing that we will allow to set up UI preference is exactly the price variance. And I want to show how it feels and how it looks. So over here on the site, if I go to the price variance resource and kind of see the overview of the resource, you see here at the top I have the permissions and then I have the UI preferences. So when I click on the UI preferences, I see that over here we have a lot of different price variants already set for the tenant. And if I navigate to the user and I click on one item, you see that all of these price variants are over here. Imagine that if there are like 20 or 30 different markets, different price variants, then it's going to be like kind of a bigger mess. So what we can do here, first thing is that we can actually change the order that they appear, because if this content editor is working only in Norway, then maybe what makes sense to see first the Norwegian price variants. So what I'll do here, I'll just drag the Norwegian retail and Norwegian sales to be the first one on the top. I'll update the row. So when I go to the item, right, you see that now I see the Norwegian prices first, and then is the rest, which I really don't care much. If I don't care really much at all, then what we can do, we can just hide them, right? So I can click on this and I say that I want to see just the Norwegian, and I'll update. So when I come here, I get this very focused view on like what is important for this row and for this user, just the Norwegian prices. And then if you want to take this even further, we can say that this user should be able to update the Norwegian retail, but the row should not be able to update the Norwegian sales price. Then we can lock it over here. And when I go, you see that this is now disabled for me. I'm not able to edit it, but I can still change the Norwegian retail price. That allows like full customization of how things are displayed in the UI, and these are the UI preferences. Of course, here we have also the option to hide the price variance completely from the UI, so the user doesn't care about setting the price variance. They will never see that in the menu, and they will never be able to navigate. So they can just work with what is already set for them.
Nice. And good case for this is also if there's multiple prices for a market, and one of them is, for example, always updated via the API from the ERP, for example, like the base price, and then you can set the sales price for the market or membership price, or work with discounting basically. So it's a good way also not to easily mess up as an editorial user, right?
Yeah. That's definitely a good use case here.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
This is really nice, and I must say this is permissions are something you usually don't show in a product when you demo it, but somehow this has become part of all of our demos now, because it's so intuitive, and you can configure a quite complex role in seconds, right? So it's a big kudos to the engineering and design team for making this up.
Yeah,
I feel that it's quite different. It's unique to Crystallize, a little bit inspired by games, but taken into the enterprise settings. So I guess that's the introduction to the roles and permissions that is available in Crystallize. Spin up the tenant and test it yourself. Join our Slack community if you have any questions or comments. We're happy to join the discussion, and there's even more updates coming in the future here, especially around more conditions and UI preferences there. But at least you have the basic overview, and it's already super powerful. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one next week.
Thanks. Bye.